Welcome back, guys. This is Shane. I've sold all of my Sony cameras, so I'm going to share with you a bit of a camera update, what I kept and why, and what I'm planning on shooting with. Now, I'm not suggesting everyone make this move whatsoever, but it was something that I felt like it was time to move some things on. And the things that I enjoyed shooting with the least were my Sony cameras. I love the FX3 in the studio, and the Sony FX30 is still a really great value camera, but for all the handheld stuff that I do, the Lumix system just works better for me. Although there's limitations with some crops on the full frame cameras and autofocus in different modes and all that kind of stuff, overall, they're kind of the cameras that I enjoy shooting with the most, and they help keep me motivated, which is why I ended up selling all of my Sony cameras. So I sold my Sony a7S III first, I got rid of that, and I was left with the Sony FX3 and FX30. And the more I used the Sony FX3 and I compared it up against other cameras in the collection, all of my other cameras just had superior IBIS or in-body image stabilization, which was the biggest reason why I thought I could probably move these on. They're just relegated to the studio. They don't offer me the same sort of handheld experience as the E-stabilization modes on my S5 Mark IIX or G9 Mark II or any of my other Lumix cameras. So I've decided it was the right time to move those cameras on. Now, to be fair, when I first purchased my FX3 and then later the a7S III, it was for projects we were shooting over in the United States, and I wanted two cameras that had excellent autofocus and image quality, obviously great subject separation, background blur, all that kind of stuff. Those were the things that were important to me on that shoot because I was mostly in front of the camera, which meant my girlfriend was going to be holding the cameras and I didn't want to have to worry about autofocus. And they did a really great job at the expense of IBIS. Now, this was at a time where I'd come from shooting micro four thirds with contrast detection autofocus, and the difference was night and day. The Sony system, when it comes to autofocus, is still exceptional, but it's been great now for quite some time. So the FX3 really ticked the box there in terms of what I was looking for at the time. Looking back at the footage, I'm so glad I had a set of cameras that had great autofocus and great image quality. But the great news is, it's so much easier now than when I purchased my Sonys back in the day to get great image quality and autofocus, of course, out of any camera or sensor size, which kind of brings me to my point. Before I unveil the camera, I also forgot to mention before, I sold about 15 different lenses. The great thing about the E-mount is it's really easy to sell stuff. They go like that. I sold everything I listed in about 3 days on eBay here in Australia, which is crazy. So that was great. I was able to move a whole bunch of stuff on, and then we got one of these. Check it out, the Panasonic Lumix GH7. Now, the other reason this camera has been stuck in my brain, I directly compared it up against the Sony FX30, and minus some differences in the shallow depth of field with equivalent lenses, all that kind of stuff we all know about, I think this outperformed it. I like the image quality out of this better, and it's a far better camera handheld thanks to the in-body image stabilization, which is important to me. Now, this will be used primarily as a run and gun camera or in the studio when I'm doing tutorials because I can get more in focus and still have a fast aperture of f1.7 or 1.4, but it gives you twice the amount of depth of field, which is really handy in certain shooting scenarios. So I was really impressed by this to the point where I was like, what would I rather shoot with? A camera that's only relegated to the studio, or something I can use in the studio, but also take it out and shoot my shows with it on my other YouTube channel, or take it out and shoot this channel outside with micro four thirds. So I thought, we're going to get a Panasonic GH7. Now, I don't quite have the same lens lineup I had many years ago, but I've got enough lenses to make this still a viable option. The other reason I want to get it is I have a GH6 still, which I don't plan on getting rid of. I think this might be still one of the best value cameras of 2024 because you can get these for about 30% off if you're looking around. So yeah, great camera. And this will pair beautifully with the GH7 in a multi-camera situation because the HDMI latency is the same and physical body's the same. So if you learn one camera, you know how to use the other one. So here it is, the Panasonic Lumix GH7. I thought we'd do a quick unboxing here and just show you what you get in the box and see if this varied from the original review video that I did of the Lumix loaner unit. So let's take a look. We get some instructions and so forth. We get a nice camera strap here. I never use these. Let us know if you do in the comment section. Looks like we've got a time code port here as well if you want to use the time code on the camera. Again, not something that I've ever used. We get the same battery we find in the S5 Mark IIX, GH6, G9 Mark II and all the modern cameras like the S9. This wasn't in the box of my review unit, and I said in my video it doesn't come with a charger, which is a little bit disappointing, but there's one in the box, so yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad. You can never have too many battery chargers, so well done to Panasonic there. All right. And lastly, the camera itself. Let's take a look at this. Let's see what it looks like. It looks and feels exactly like the GH6, which is pretty wild. Let me hold up the GH6 here. There's the GH6. And for those wondering, I think the GH7 is slightly lighter, only by a little bit, but they're essentially the same body design and everything like that. So if you've already got a cage for the GH6, it will work with the Lumix GH7. Now I want to put this video together just to share with you the news. The GH7 is in the house, and I thought I'd make a whole bunch of content with this camera moving forward. I'm also going to talk about what I do as soon as I turn the camera on, which I'm not going to share with you in this video. That'll be a dedicated video coming up next, so if you're not already subscribed, please do so. Again, Micro Four Thirds is one of those things that will appeal to some people and not others. I'm one of those weirdos that loves shooting Micro Four Thirds and full frame. I felt like APS-C wasn't for me, and that's not to belittle the format. I think it's great. There's plenty of great lenses if you're coming from Sony E-mount or Fuji or whatever, but I really like Micro Four Thirds. I love being able to get great results out of a really, or somewhat small sensor here. And this is just an absolute beast of a camera. Now, if you're wondering whether or not I'll be shooting RAW internally with this or external to an SSD, no, unless I really need to, but this is going to be one of my main sort of run and gun content creation cameras on this channel and my other one. Anytime I'm testing Micro Four Thirds lenses now, I'll have two cameras that have PDAF, which will make it easy. This, and of course the G9 Mark II. And while I'm not scared of using manual focus, it's one of those things where if you're shooting on your own, it's a lot easier a lot of the time to not have to worry about setting up manual focus points. So yeah, the GH7 is in the house. Let us know what you think. Thanks again for watching. Leave a thumbs up, comment below if you saw this coming. I'm sure a few people might have. And later on in the year, I'm also going to be going into state again. I'll be taking this. Stay tuned.